Is to talk about the monster stat line, including the career high with 6 blocks or the 7 assists. But more interesting there was the body language. Robert Covington, Karl Anthony Towns, hugging. There seems to be a lot of chemistry between the two, and that's what was missing in Minnesota. How important is that for them going forward and just seeing that small moment between those two?
I think ultimately it's going to be whether or not Karl Anthony Towns is ready to play the way he played tonight, more consistent. And he's been better individually, no doubt about it, since the trade. Covington has really been solid for them as well. But it's going to be more a matter, is this going to be a playoff team? I like the fact that he was more active. Like, that's the issue. And listen, I do think that was part of the issue that maybe Jimmy Butler had, because Jimmy Butler knows how talented Karl Anthony Towns is. But the question was he playing up to his potential on a consistent basis? And I think that was a big concern. When you look at the two guys Jimmy Butler's playing with now, I don't think there's any question that those two guys are better at this stage than Towns and Wiggins are. And they're in the Eastern Conference, which probably...
And Embiid and Simmons.
Yes. And so I think for Karl Anthony Towns, and I like how he's responded to it, he's playing at a level now where he's getting back to potentially being an all-star, and he's going to have to be if this team has any chance of making the postseason.
Well, to add to that, I mean, you talked about his body language, and, you know, those are two guys in that interview that benefited heavily from this trade. And Covington coming over and kind of filling that 3D role, shooting the heck out of the ball this season. But in Towns and the way they're using him within the offense, it seemed like he never figured out what to do when Jimmy Butler had the ball. And, you know, obviously his point per game are up 2 points. And, you know, he's playing defense. That was a huge question mark as well. And, you know, you just see him playing with passion. But, G.A., to your point, he has to play consistent. And I think in doing this trade, a lot falls on Wiggins and Towns. You know, Tibbs did this trade, and, you know, it's no secret. I mean, Tibbs isn't guaranteed for next year. So this is huge. This is a huge season going forward for the entire organization.
Looking at Minnesota, and we know how Tom Thibodeau is when he has his guys, they stay in rotation, they play heavy minutes. Robert Covington clearly there, but Dario Saric, looking at it, 19 minutes for him. Here's a guy in Philadelphia that had a bigger role, kind of having a smaller role in Minnesota. What are you looking for from Saric to see if he's going to be successful there or maybe needs to go somewhere else?
Well, he's 24 years old, and, you know, Tibbs plays his guys, you're right. But at the same time, the NBA is always in need of a stretch shooter that can play the type of role that he did and played for the Sixers last year. So I look for, as the offense and the season continues, them to get him more minutes and him be able to fit in within the offense a little bit better.
You know, it's going to be interesting to see because, you know, if you go back to his second year, he averaged almost 15 points a game, you know, so you thought he would trend. But he's actually went the other way.
Yeah.
You know, the shooting from three, not as good the last couple seasons. Defensively, still a bit of an issue. And he's not a guy, and that's why the postseason is so important, because the postseason really shows us who you are. You're going to play against a team potentially 7 times. They're going to game plan you. They know your tendencies. And he struggled mightily last season. And so that's probably partly why you don't see the minutes growing in Minnesota yet, because he hasn't quite figured out how to have more of an impact on the game, whereas Covington has. And so I do think in order for him to earn Tibbs' trust, he's going to have to play better because he has not been great this year, whether it was in Philadelphia or in Minnesota.
Speaking of that former team, the Philadelphia 76ers paying a